Welcome viewers, Dr. JWA. Let's do a criminal behavioural analysis based on what I see from the story of Simon Carman.
26. A security camera in the lobby of a high-rise condominium on Jom Tien 2nd Road in Pattaya captured a couple holding hands as they entered an elevator. The man had the tall build of a Western tourist. Beside him was a young local woman with dyed blonde hair. Together, they went up to a room on the 15th floor of the building. It would be the last time she was seen alive.
Simon Carman. The report examines the publicly reported behavioural progression surrounding the death of 17-year-old Tunchanok Donhomla in Pattaya, Thailand, and the subsequent arrest of Australian citizen Simon Peter Carman. The analysis is based solely on publicly reported information. The accused denies the charges, and the matters remain before the Thai courts. And this report does not determine criminal responsibility or provide a psychiatric diagnosis. Its purpose is to examine the reported behavioural sequence through the lens of criminal behavioural analysis. Viewers, a serious criminal investigation extend beyond the question of whether a record of crime has occurred. Serious criminal investigations extend beyond the question of whether a crime occurred. They seek to understand the sequence of human decisions that transformed an ordinary interaction into an event of international criminal significance. The reported information describes a behavioural progression, beginning with the contact between two individuals and ending with an international homicide investigation involving forensic evidence, CCTV reconstruction, body concealment, cross-jurisdictional law and enforcement, and a murder charge. From a behavioural perspective, each reported decision becomes part of a larger criminal architecture. Behavioural thesis. If the prosecution establishes its case beyond reasonable doubt, reported chronological order would illustrate a progressive criminal behavioural cascade. Rather than ending with the reported fatal event, the behavioural sequence continued through concealment, transportation, relocation, continued movement, and eventual arrest. Each reported decision appears to increase behavioural complexity, forensic exposure, and potential criminal liability. Behaviourally, the significance lies not in one isolated act, but in accumulation of successive decisions. Behavioural progression, phase 1, initial contact. According to police, the victim's final verified movements placed her entering the suspect's condominium. This establishes the beginning of the behavioural timeline from which investigators reconstruct all subsequent events. Phase 2, reported violent encounter. Police have publicly referred to physical injuries and scratches they believe are consistent with a struggle. The forensic interpretation of those findings will ultimately be determined through judicial process. Behavioural reported resistance represents an escalation from ordinary interpersonal contact into a critical event requiring forensic reconstruction. Phase 3, concealment. Investigators report that the victim's body was discovered inside a suitcase. From a criminal behavioural perspective, concealment represents a significant psychological transition. The reported behaviour shifts from the critical event itself toward managing discovery. delaying investigation, and increasing separation between the reported event and its detection. Phase 4, transportation. Police state CCTV records movement of a suitcase matching the one later recovered. If accepted by the court, this reported movement represents behavioural escalation. The reported sequence progresses beyond concealment into active relocation. Each movement creates additional behavioural decisions. Each decision potentially expands forensic opportunity. Phase 5, post-event behaviour. Police report continued movement after the reported disposal before the subsequent airport arrest. Behavioural investigations frequently examine post-event conduct because it may provide insight into how an individual responds after a critical incident. Whether these reported actions reflect ordinary travel or an attempt to avoid investigation is ultimately a matter for the court. Behavioural architecture. The reported behavioural sequence can be viewed as a progressive cascade: contact, conflict, concealment, transportation, relocation, continued movement, arrest. From a behavioural perspective, each reported decision appears to generate the need for another. Rather than reducing the consequences of preceding the event, each reported behaviour response appears to expand both investigative complexity and potential criminal exposure. Criminal behavioural assessment. The most significant behavioural feature is not necessarily the reported violence itself. It is the reported continuation of decision-making afterward. If the prosecution proves its case, the reported concealment, transportation, relocation, and subsequent movements would indicate that behavioural activity continued after the central event rather than ending with it. This is consistent with the behavioural analysis often described as post-event behavioural escalation, where the consequences of an initial event become amplified through subsequent decisions. My overall conclusion, viewers: behavioural analysis does not determine guilt. That responsibility belongs exclusively to the court. Its role is to examine observable behavioural progression. If the prosecution establishes the reported evidence beyond reasonable doubt, this case would illustrate how a single critical event can evolve into a complex criminal sequence through its successive event decisions happen after. The report chronologically suggests that the behavioural significance lies not only in reported murder, but in the continued decision-making that followed. Ultimately, the case illustrates a central principle of criminal behavioural analysis. Critical incidents rarely conclude with the first decisive act. They continue to the choices made afterwards, and those subsequent choices often determine the ultimate behavioural, forensic and legal significance of the entire event. It's obvious what this man has done, Simon Carman has done, and he might end up with the death sentence. I hope this report has given you something to think about from another angle. Thank you for joining me, and bye for now.